Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning to you, Angie.
How are you?
Well, ready for battle.
That's always a good state to be in. Always a good state to be in. Well, listen, I know it's been a few weeks since we got together. Through no fault of our own, life throws everybody curves, and you got to handle business.
So
That's just
true.
all there is to it. But today, if I remember correctly, that the last time we got together, you had said something about you wanted to talk about your book, Climb to 8 and Wait.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm gonna show them the book here. I'm gonna keep the light from doing it. It's Climb to 8 and Wait, and the subtitle is If You Can Get Her in the Air, She'll Get You There. And here is the 5. There was the old Shakey that you were on. This is the plane that came before old Shakey.
Yes.
And that's, for those who live in Georgia, y'all know this is Stone Mountain. Pilots all know about Stone Mountain, of course, it's a landmark. But for those that don't, it is a huge...
and you notice on there where it said Georgia Air National Guard on the side of that airplane, which was against what the National Control for any emergencies or active duty. They wanted just Air Force only on there. But the states have a way of getting their way through the senators and so forth.
Well, you know.
So they did it and they got away with it.
There you go. There you go. So let me see what this book says. It's isn't this a series?
Yes.
Isn't this a series of stories from different people?
64 stories. This is the second edition, printed 3 or 4 printings. And the second edition, the first edition had 20 stories, okay? And, 24 stories initially. And I pushed those aviators from sergeants to general to give me another. So we would have another 40 stories. So we ended up with 64 stories from 20 airmen, aviators in different positions, and from sergeant to general. What an exciting trip that was. And it was so much more meaningful than I ever could have imagined, collecting those stories, because sometimes warriors are reluctant to tell their stories.
They really are. They really are.
I had to push them.
And because you were in that same boat,
yes,
you knew how to approach them.
And when they died on me, I got some stories from the widows or the children of those aviators. And being the Air National Guard put on active duty every time we went outside the country, or we did things like hurricanes, Helene, and different hurricanes and serious things they would call, particularly for the state, like when Martin Luther was killed, and then there were riots that started in Augusta, Georgia. People don't know all that history. They were in position at Dobbins to go there and quell the riot. They had tanks and people who slept ready to go for the emergency anywhere in the state.
That's really neat. So let me show y'all this cover again.
All kinds of history.
Now, this one is not available on Amazon, am I correct?
I have a number of them available.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Yes. So
Batchelder Publications then?
Yes. So if anybody wants a copy of this book, just go to joshbatchelder.com and just keep scrolling down. You'll finally see the book. It'll tell you where to send a check, and it'll tell you how much it is as far as each copy. So if you have pilots in your family and you want to give them
or navigators or flight engineers or load masters or nurses who were flight nurses,
anybody that deals with this sort of thing in the armed forces.
Terrific gift for people with military service who have had military service, or for their children or their grandchildren.
Right. So I like the name Old Shakey.
Yes.
But how did it become that name? Because they didn't name it that.
My first flight. Okay. Sure, they call it that. It's a very funny animal, this old Shakey. It came out of the Berlin airlift, and they had so many flights and they couldn't carry a lot of cargo, or they had to disassemble stuff that was too large for the C-97 they were flying before that, and others. So the C-47, they had to cut everything down and build it back up again. So they developed this bird so it would have twice as many soldiers, like 200 fully equipped for battle, rather than 100 in the C-97 that was before the old Shakey. They designed it, and they took everything that was heavy, like you need very strong fuselage material, but there's a lot of weight there for a pressurized airplane. So this was thin-skinned, if you will, and you couldn't have no pressurization. You couldn't normally fly for any length of time above 10,000 because you needed oxygen then. So you could go higher, but you couldn't stay higher for very long. And we had our oxygen mask ready and everything if we had to do that. So basically, they could from going forward, then they could carry outsized cargo. Several fire engines at a time could be driven up that ramp in the back or the front of the airplane. The clamshell doors open up. The 97 before, the rear end would open up. But this one here was a bird that had new innovations and had old things too mixed.
Well, everybody, we had to stop for a minute to change chairs. Joshua's chair was creaking a lot, and I'm sorry if y'all had to hear that. We've changed chairs to one that doesn't creak for him. So you were at the Berlin airlift,
yes,
and needing the bigger plane.
Yes, so they designed it, and it first flew in 1950. So from that point on, they could carry all kinds of cargo, and like helicopters, so they wouldn't have to disassemble the whole thing. Just load them up and have several helicopters or several fire engines and put them
a heck of a lot more than they could on the other one.
They could carry it, and with a second deck they could install or disinstall. You could have two decks, the main deck and then one above it, when you're putting out, for example, fully equipped 200 soldiers.
Right, okay.
Ready for battle, you could carry at one trip.
So why was it called Old Shakey?
Okay. Now, my first flight on that, I will describe it for you briefly, okay? And it makes a lot of noise because it has no pressurization, nothing to keep it. We had to wear headsets so we could talk to other people on the crew on the airplane. All right. So anyway, it is a huge, 150-foot wingspan or more. So they have a port up in the middle of the flight deck so that the flight engineer could get up when we're taxiing for takeoff. He could get up and look around to make sure we weren't going to hit anything on the taxiway with those wings sticking out. So anyway, he'd be there because he could see everything because it was so big and so high, like 40-some feet to the cockpit off the ground. So we're sitting high up there, and he's looking around to make sure we don't hit anything, all right? And making sure everything's clear. Okay. So we taxi down for takeoff, and they run up the engines. Like I said, we got our headsets on, otherwise we can't talk to each other.
Is this where the climb to 8 and wait is going to get ready to come in?
Yes, I'm going to explain what happens next.
I can't wait.
So we get to and we run up those 4360 engines. They're the biggest old things you couldn't imagine, like 56 spark plugs. Amazing things that in the book is talking
56 spark plugs each?
For each engine.
Oh my God.
So that may not be the precise number I've got. It goes back quite a few, but my son was amazed at when he read about it. He just was driven, couldn't believe it. The engine was huge.
Okay, everybody, we had to stop again for a moment. What's the name of that phone you have now that enables you to read? What's it called? Clear caption? The name of your phone.
Clear captions.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
The clear caption phone went off, and because he's so bad of hearing,
yes,
it just blasted out as y'all got and saw. So we stopped it.
Thanks to my flying years, I have a disability that requires
because
hearing aids, and even
wait. So I'm just confirming we're filming because there's been distractions, but you're hearing. Because of all those years of flying in these really loud things and dealing with the
up and down, and started in
altitudes
jets
and
when I
stuff.
burst them, and then they
Yeah.
burst several times later.
Okay, so now we're back to Old Shakey, and y'all are on the runway, and you're whooshing them
Ready for
engines.
takeoff.
Okay, proceed.
So we get the tower calls, and then they have their foot on the brakes, okay? Both the pilot and the co-pilot, they got a heavy foot on the brake because they're going to rev those engines up for takeoff, full power, okay? And so it's so different from the jets I took and when you leap off, okay? So we start off and we go lumbering down the runway,
Lumbering?
okay? And then it's very funny airplane. We go lumbering down the runway and then we hop and then we start struggling. You see that shaking. That's what I can't even write the takeoff time as a navigator because my pencil or pen, usually I use a pencil because I got to erase a lot of things and as a navigator to get things in right. And we finally get up and then we struggle as we climb out. And you got to be sure there's no mountains up there because you can hit one real easy. It's so slow. And they have a saying, this is how slow it is. You climb at 200. Well, when you get to cruise, you cruise at 200 knots, okay, knots. And you descend at 200 because you can't go much faster. You're stuck with that. And if you can get her in the air, she'll get you there, okay?
So what does climb to 8
And when
mean?
you say wait, because it takes a long time to get somewhere, you're not in a jet now, all of a sudden, even though there's jets flying all over the place, you're carrying heavy cargo a long distance and you're going to fly 1,000 miles or more without refueling.
Okay, but what does climb to 8 mean?
Because you normally wouldn't go over 10,000 feet. So on a westbound, for example, you have one altitude and an eastbound. So they separate 1,000 feet or so from east and westbound.
So what
on
does
the flight
climb?
level.
So what does climb
8
to
is a
8?
common altitude, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it. But normally 8 is very common depending on the direction of travel. So we cruise oftentimes at that level, not high. We can't go above the clouds. We're stuck in the clouds. If it's rain or shine or sleet or anything, we
Doesn't
cannot
matter,
get
you're
above
stuck
it.
there.
We can try to go around it, thunder bumpers and so forth,
Yeah.
but we're stuck with low altitude flying.
So 8,000 feet is climb to 8. 8 is
So
8,000?
now we get to,
Is that right?
yes, no,
Okay.
it's a common altitude. They'll be above or below, but it's not high altitude, it's
Right,
low.
okay.
So
And the wait means that's where you're going to stay until
a
you get to
long
where you're
time
going.
to get where you want to go.
Oh my gosh. See, I never knew that. I always loved the title, Climb to 8 and Wait.
Means patience. Lots of it.
You know what? That's a t-shirt right there.
No,
Climb
we
to
could
8 and
have a
Wait.
14-hour flight. I've had those 14-hour
Yeah.
flights, and they're bringing me coffee and making sure I stay awake as a navigator.
As a navigator, you need
They
to be
really
awake.
treat me nice. They see if I'm. They look at my face as a navigator when I'm in the middle of the drink. This, the big pond is the Pacific. The small pond is the Atlantic. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, they're kind of watching me. One time I was sick, and I was the only navigator coming from Europe to the U.S. And I had the flu or something coming on and snizzling, but I had to stay on the job. And they were watching me, really watching how's this navigator doing.
Right.
So once we got within about 125 miles of the coast in New England coast, and about 125, we picked up a radio beacon and started going. They released me from having to work. The pilots took over them because they could use their instruments. They just needed me over water.
Yeah, my cousin Karen just was flying back from London. She went to London for several days, see all the sights. She's one of those people that loves all things British. But their return flight was delayed by about 5 hours, 3 or 4 or 5 hours, something like that, because radar was down, and they needed it.
For going around any bad weather like thunderstorms over the Atlantic, could be fierce.
Fierce.
I had 2 a month apart one time when I was getting a flight check the second time. And what happened when you're going, for example, at 200 knots, let's just say you're 8,000 feet, and you're headed from, let's say, France, okay, or Germany, where we come there, and And we're coming out of the Azores, we overnight, and then we continue on west, and we're going to fly over Bermuda. That's the only place to land out there between the Azores and to the east coast of the U.S., where we go into Charleston, okay? Commonly go into Charleston after, but we go over Bermuda in case there's a problem, and we have unusual winds, which we did. We had a month apart. I had the same thing. I'm glad I was not a brand new Navigator.
Right.
Because what we had to do is we had 140 knot wind, headwind.
Oh.
And flying, that means you're making forward progress at about 60 knots with the 200 knots, okay? So if you're prevented and you try to go around and you turn back to go around a thunder bumper because it comes up on the radar, you can see it. That's why you need the radar.
Wow.
You can see, but you can't see a thunderstorm because it's all this bright spot. You don't know what's behind another thunderstorm if you don't know whether it's there or not. So you try to go around. But if you turn around for a short time, all of a sudden, instead of going 200, you're going 360, 340 knots, 140 knot headwind. So all of a sudden you're going in the wrong direction. Well, very soon your fuel graph says you ain't going to have enough to get to Charleston. So then you're going to head on that. You're watching the fuel graph. I'm watching it, and so is the flight engineer who plays with the engines. Okay, he's got 4 of them to play with, all these dials and throttles and everything. So basically then, we're in the clouds, we're bumping around, it's rain and it's bumpy as the devil, and we go around it, and so I've got to find with the radar that island, and the radar is not going to be much good for more than 30 miles. Those radars, it was right above. Well, it happened to be a 1,500 wide hurricane that we were going through.
1,500 miles?
Long.
Wow.
And about 350 miles deep.
Oh.
If that doesn't put the fear in somebody, nothing will. When you're bumping all over the place, it's raining like mad, and you don't have hardly any aids at that point, and you're shifting direction so much you can't use certain kinds of navigation where you have to have some steady flying in a certain heading. You're changing headings. So I got that problem to deal with. So then I'm looking for the island, and we just found it. And it was such a bad hurricane when we got into Bermuda, the only place we could land, otherwise we end up in the drink. When we landed, I was afraid about, they call Tom Terrific, the pilot. And I happened to be a little concerned about Tom because he was always jumpy, okay? He didn't want to land there in a crosswind that was so heavy that, it's hard just to head the airplane down and land, and all of a sudden at the end when you're landing, you got to turn from coming sideways to avoid the wind blowing you off the runway. So you got to suddenly at the last moment switch to the heading of the runway and touch. Well, when we did do that, we took a sigh of relief. We were able to find and land, and then when we parked it on the ramp next to the operations, we had to crawl. The wind was that strong, we had to crawl into our base operations.
Oh my gosh.
Well, a month later, I got a check ride, so I made a decision then. I'm going to go straight through. It's no worse than trying to go around where you don't know where you are anyway, and all you could do is bump ahead. So we did. So old Shakey always shook. It doesn't make any difference. You're steady up there, you're going 200 knots, you're still shaking. But the big shaking, like I say, it was quite a trip that first. So later on, I demonstrated for my daughter's class of 11-year-olds in the 5th grade. I took a tour of 42 of them, and I took them to a simulated trip to Vietnam. And I went, I got to Batar, the weather station, the check-in, the file a flight plan, an operation, and then old Shakey. And old Shakey is so funny. The kids wrote me 42 letters in cursive. They wrote me, my own daughter, and it wrote 42 letters of thank you. They were all different. And they had their personalities were all there, and I've collected. It's a treasure. 42 letters, each one is unique. They did not get what to say from the teacher, and most of them, the biggest excitement they had was looking at the simulator. They all wanted to go there again to the simulator and fly. And another kid said he couldn't believe, when are you going to show us an airplane that'll fly? They had to climb up 2 sets of stairways to get to the cockpit. They didn't think it was an airplane. That kid didn't think it was an airplane. It was so ugly. Nothing smooth about it.
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. Now, for people who have not heard other of the videos that Joshua has done or have gone to his website, let me just tell folks they need to go to his website, because besides being this navigator and dealing with all of this sort of thing, there came a point where he was showing children around into these things.
Introducing them to history.
Introducing them, well, not just to history.
That was in the
right.
middle of war.
It was in the middle of war. What year was that you showed them around?
Okay, well, I can tell you. It was, I think it was 66, because she was, it was 11-year-olds in the 5th grade.
Okay, so there you go. So
she's born 55, 66.
Right. So in 1966, it was still, there was...
It was beginning of the heating up.
The heating up of, yes, it was. But the reason I'm telling y'all about this, because he mentioned the children's handwriting.
Yes.
And Josh is also a certified graphoanalyst. I'm not even going to get into that today.
That's a separate, exciting story.
Completely. And also the fact that they wrote in cursive, because is an exciting thing.
Same teacher for cursive, all 42.
Yes. So we're going to do another podcast on all the handwriting stuff.
Fun.
But he'll have some fun stories to tell about
I'll
that.
tell you.
So,
and each kid is so different.
Oh, yeah, they are. So back to Old Shakey.
Yes.
How many years were you on Old
5
Shakey?
years on Old Shakey. I had a total of the C-97 Stratofreighter, before that, the Boeing. So together, that airplane that we flew for 5 years. And first I was disappointed about having to fly Old Shakey. I was very disappointed.
Why?
Because we could step climb and get rid of some fuel. And it was Pan American Airlines would use that for the long flights. And it was such a gas guzzle. It ate up so much gas, they sold them back to the Air Force to use. The C-97 Boeing Stratofreighter, okay? Right. So I was disappointed. They had one Stratofreighter that I may have mentioned in an earlier talk, I don't know, off the Pacific, I felt so good about it, because they had to call, when it had to ditch on a problem in the Pacific off the coast of California, they had to bring a destroyer in so it wouldn't be a menace to navigation. The people all got out. The thing floated good. Old Shakey would have broken up. It was so thin-skinned. So the boy was able to...
It would have broken up and sunk.
You're damn right. So, when we get to Old Shakey, we start flying, then Joshua starts thinking about, oh my God, what if we have to ditch? Okay, this airplane couldn't stand it. It would sink suddenly, and you with it. So I was very disappointed about Old Shakey. But why do we love Old Shakey?
Yes.
Several good reasons. If you can get her in the air, she'll get you there. Very reliable. They didn't even, the fuel tanks were in the wing. There was no sealed tank in the wing. They were saving the weight of the skin of the type of a rubber holding of the gasoline of the inside. It was a wet wing, always leaking oil, always leaking gas. You just had to see how much it was leaking at a time. So it was a very leaky airplane. Now the one is the saving grace. Why do I say it'll get you there? It had one of the most reliable cruise. In cruising, you could control the heading within 1 degree. Okay, when you were flying on instruments, you could fix it there on 1 degree heading, and it would stay and hold true.
How about that?
So, in spite of all of its problems and its weaknesses, and it had some ingenuity, had some modern things to deal with it, they could go inside of the wing of that airplane and do certain, shut an engine down and do certain types of fixing, replace a generator, or do different things they could do and get the engine started up again, because they had 4 of them. You want to have at least 2 or 3 going.
Yeah.
In fact, one time we had 1 going and the second one was failing, and we were off the coast of France. It was before the halfway point, and we turned around and went back. And we just went and we spent 5 days while they're waiting for them to fly a big old engine in to replace the one we had.
Right.
So we rode bicycles because we'd already spent all our money in Germany there. So we rode bicycles, ate cheese and drank wine and rode the countryside. Went to the museum of the 4 or 5 wars in France while we waited, but we had no money to go waste, so we just had our cheese and we had our wine as we drove around waiting for the engine to come back. And I ended up going on another airplane so I could get back to business. So they took them another week or so to get to fix that old Shakey, fly her back.
I know. You know, like I said, I've known of this title for a long time, but I've never really gotten into it because I didn't know what it was about.
I gotta tell you a story that happened no more than a week or so ago about old Shakey.
Okay.
All right. They started this Admiral Byrd.
Hang on 1 second. For people listening, when he said a week or so ago, today is August 1st, 2025. That'll help you pinpoint the story.
Yes.
Go ahead.
A guy I hadn't seen in years who was the flight check guy who had a lot of experience as a navigator. They have a man assigned from the Air Force to watch over and train and help Air National Guard, and he was the navigator, okay? Now, they were establishing a base down in Antarctica on the top of a 9,500-foot iceberg mountain, if you will, and to establish there for purposes of checking the weather and learning about National Science Foundation. So they lost 5 airplanes, old Shakey, I believe it was, they lost 5 airplanes trying to build a base by dropping stuff like out of the 97. You could drop these different types of equipment like a bulldozer or something like that to build that runway at 9,500 feet, okay? So it's the treacherous weather. People don't know much, most people, although they now have tours there, most people don't know that the Antarctica has got 9 times as much ice as the Arctic. So when they talk about losing a degree in the temperature and the ice is melting, oh my God, in the Arctic, they don't understand at the same time it was increased icing down there, okay, increased icing that was going on, a half a degree a year.
Right.
So it balanced out and then some. So that's, they don't know, and I learned a lot of this from an Egyptian scientist who addressed our aerospace education group, who told us about, at any one time around the world, 50% of the world is covered with clouds. And the temperature difference is amazing, including Mount Katahdin years ago.
Sure.
That cloud dropped the temperature a half a degree within a year.
Yeah.
Just the cloud, a big cloud from a volcanic ash, and it knocked out the air base in the Philippines.
So old Shakey.
Old Shakey always shook.
Yes, I know, but you said a couple of weeks ago something happened with
So,
old Shakey.
thank you, Angie. I get diverted easily.
Yes, you do.
The word is divert in aviation. I was called up by the guy they call the Arctic prick, okay?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
The Arctic prick.
He was an examiner, my examiner, because I was the wing chief navigator. I was the first guy he checked, okay? So I got his story in the book with all the others, okay? It's an amazing story. So basically, they lost 5 airplanes trying to build an air base in Antarctica for Admiral Byrd.
Okay, just 1 second. So you started this with 2 weeks ago, something happened with old Shakey. Okay, he called you and he's telling you what?
So I've got his story in there about flying in there and what he do, and his job was examining other navigators. He said some of them lost promotions because he would not certify them ready to fly, and he had enough experience and he was the best of the best flying in the Arctic region. So they used him to save a whole crew, because if a navigator failed, the whole crew went with him when you crash.
Right.
So they used him for flying him, and so some people lost promotions if they weren't cleared to fly into Antarctica.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, he called you?
So they called him the Arctic prick.
Yes, but 2 weeks ago, did he call you?
A week or so ago.
What did he say?
He just wanted to talk to me. He's got the book, and he was reading it. And all these books that these guys bought for me, okay, and they have the memories they live with. He just wondered if Josh, he was 92, and he was wondering if Josh was still alive. And Josh was. They're losing friends, you know, and so have I lost a lot of them.
Yeah, I know.
I ain't getting
I know.
ready to die, folks, by the way. I've got a lot to do, God willing.
So the Arctic prick called you 2 weeks ago, and y'all talked about old Shakey.
He was looking at his story as in the others. And we have an engineer from Georgia Tech. He's describing the airplane with a technical. He got all kinds of stories, funny and some that weren't so funny. From the guys that flew, it's a much safer thing to fly than in jets that I was first flying.
Oh, yeah.
You lose more. You don't lose many old Shakeys. You're flying transport missions.
Yeah.
Except if you went into Antarctica before Gordon Leopard. He's like a leopard. I think of a leopard. Gordon Leopard. What a treat. They kept trying to bugger my associate and another helped me do some work around the place here. Kept calling me, and I wouldn't let go of talking to him until I talked at length, and we went back and forth. I sent him a whole bunch of my books. I don't have to make a nickel selling books. I just love what I've done and the stories that mean so much to so many people. Yes. So, anyway, they were hungry, and I'm hungry, and I like to go eat too. But I was so caught up with that, I forget about eating. Oh, I'm telling you, folks, what a trip. 64 stories that are something to die for.
They really are. And I'm just going to show folks this cover again. Let me get the light where it's not shining on it and doing everything. There we go. Climb to 8 and wait.
So Angie, he will prepare you to understand flying into the Antarctica, what is another world that most people have no idea. They don't teach it in the schools probably. And what he wrote there that I collected is a wonderment of understanding of Antarctica.
Folks really need to get the book because and get it from Joshua.
If it's just for that, but the other stories will entertain you.
I know. We're going to end right now, but let me ask you a question. Did you hear about what President Trump is bringing back into the schools? Did you hear it?
No, perhaps. Oh, education, but what was it?
No. He's bringing it back, the presidential fitness
program. I loved what I saw of that. I loved it.
Listen, when I was a kid, I never passed it. And I didn't know why.
You tried was the big thing.
I tried really hard.
It still affects your diet and everything else.
No, it didn't.
Didn't?
No,
Okay.
I didn't grow up with a lot of food.
Right. Okay, all right.
No, I never could do the same things that other kids could do and couldn't figure out why. And I now know that I couldn't do it because I was born with autoimmune things and muscle issues that nobody knew about back then.
Wow.
Didn't know.
Wow.
I now know why I can't do these things. And at the time, I felt horrible that I couldn't. But they could always tell I was trying. And there were other kids that could just, lay on the floor and do all these sit-ups and then jump up and do all these pull-ups and do push-ups and this sort of thing. And I just was, oh, man. But they do know more about these kinds of things now.
You understand a lot of things about health.
Yes, but what I like about bringing this back, even though there might be some children who do have problems with it, what I like about bringing it back is that it now gives a positive goal, a positive physical goal that is done in the schools.
Yes.
Because we used to practice for it,
Instead of deteriorating.
But, a lot of schools don't even have recess anymore. Did you know that?
Yeah, I know.
That is terrible.
They're worried about
You've
so
got
many
to
things.
run this energy off.
Yes.
It's like a dog. A dog needs to be walked or they're going to go insane.
We feel very deeply about it. Anybody that has children or anybody that's got any common sense doesn't like what they see.
No, I know. So I was glad to see that. So this is August 1st, 2025. This is Joshua Batchelder. And we'll see you another week. This is episode 4. Can you believe that?
I guarantee you.
Episode 4.
Fun.
We're just doing episode 4. Well, wave goodbye and say goodbye, Joshua.
Bye. Love you.